All right, boys, we're live. This is episode 26 of the Deconstruction Podcast, brought to you by Jobtable, the simplest way to grow and manage your construction business. Let's kick it off here with a review. This is from Sean Brown. Sean is from Ohio. He's a general contractor, handyman. Very simple one here, but it's to the point. Easy to use, considerably cheaper than the other competitors without losing the same features. And I just love this one because this is, the common feedback we get. That's what Jobtable is all about. It's empowering any size contractor, whether you're one man in a truck to crews of 30 like you guys. It's affordable, $49 per month. So thank you, Sean, for that review.
Shout out
if you're a contractor listening who is looking to streamline things at an affordable rate, check out jobtable.com.
Sean Brown sounds like a celebrity name.
It does, eh?
If he wasn't already famous, he is now.
How you guys doing?
Feeling good. How are you?
Very good, very good. All right, let's kick it off here. We got some good topics today. One thing we've been hearing a lot in the last several weeks, but I feel more so now, just hearing from a lot of people in our circle about just a slowdown happening, particularly in residential construction and subdivisions. And so, Johnny, I know you're speaking to a lot of people on the ground. What's going on with residential?
Yeah, it's a big slowdown going across the province. I'm assuming across the country. I've been speaking to a lot of framers and just a lot of I want to say like kind of subdivision companies that they're really scared right now. They're not building, and there's a lot of guys that are sitting at home and they literally don't know what to do. And what I notice on what's happening is a lot of these guys are trying to shift into the custom home kind of market. But again, like a lot of these custom home builders and GCs, they already have their go-to guys. So then what starts happening is you start seeing the market being saturated and prices just plummeting, right? To frame a house and, whether it's windows or anything like that. And it's now screwing up kind of like another industry, which is the custom home guys. Just to give an example, like one of the framers I was talking to, he priced out a row of, like, there were custom homes. There was 3 of them being built. He gave a price. The builder came back and basically said, like, look, we're doing 3 of them. I need a bulk price. So he beat him down on the price by like, I want to say it was like 60,000 each house. And he brought him down to like 45,000. So, the framer ended up doing the 3 houses at 45 grand each, which he said is like extremely cheap for the going rate. And he was promised the next 3 that this home builder was doing. And when the other 3 came, that builder was telling the framer and the framing company that they now have another, like a bunch of other crews that will do each house for 30,000. Like to a point that the framer was like, man, like, he's like, I can't do it for 30,000. Like, I'm going to lose money. Like, never mind, like break even. Like, how are these guys doing it? So you're just seeing like a massive slowdown. And what's happening is these companies are now, let's say they were in the subdivision market, they're trying to shift because they need to stay busy as well. So I feel like when a market is that saturated, there's just no money to be made, right? And if anything, quite the contrary, where people are actually taking jobs at a loss. So it's pretty scary out there, man. It's like what I'm seeing here. It's pretty crazy.
So you mentioned framers, right? Like, why do you think framers, like, our framers usually hit like first and the hardest, just because they're typically brought in early?
Yeah, so... they're if it's like anything else, right? If you know, site service contractors are not busy, that means that there's not a lot of infrastructure going on, right? Um, if there's nobody doing foundations, that's, you know, again, that means that the house are not going up. If framers are not framing, you know, same thing, right? That means houses are not getting built like they once upon a time were. So I'm just noticing, it's no secret that obviously subdivisions have taken a big hit. You know, we have a housing crisis, not enough houses, but also to build the houses with the builders, they're, you know, just due to the market, it just doesn't make sense for them. We've talked about this on the show before, where they're shelving projects. So what starts to happen is, you know, a lot of these subdivision companies, they'll have like, you know, 100 framers, you know. So all of a sudden they start doing massive layoffs because there's no subdivisions going up. And then what happens is those framers start to look at other avenues, right? Like, I need to build, I need to work, I need to make money. And they start to shift into, okay, well, you know, I'll just build custom homes. So now they start hitting up, you know, custom home builders that are maybe building, you know, 5, 10 a year, more intricate work, you know, but then they're undercutting the actual like market value, right? So it's bringing like the market values down, right? And again, this is from what people are telling me.
Yeah. This is I'm pulling up this chart here. This is the most recent one I could find. So this is housing starts in Canada. So you can see the blue line here, housing starts. Like that's a pretty significant drop in the last, I'd say, I don't know, 6 months, from, I don't know, call it 270 down to 214 as of March. You can see the red line here is the 6 month moving average. So you could see it kind of sloping downwards. So, you know, that the stats kind of paint that story as well. Like the starts are definitely slowing down. And it's interesting because when you think about it, this is something we've been talking about, I feel, since last year, right? If you're paying attention to what's going on in the economy with just in the last several years with interest rates and the uncertainty and throwing the tariffs now, this really shouldn't be a surprise. Like, we've been talking about getting prepared, getting, you know, thinking about ways to be more efficient. Like, how can you cut down your costs? And I think now you're starting to see the real impacts on a day-to-day that's actually affecting the you know, the average trades company, like this framer and some other people that we're talking about. So Charlie, what are you seeing on the ground with conversations you're having?
From my side of the table, I'm the one that's responsible for all the hiring in our company. So, you know, I'm seeing a lot of guys coming from the residential sector trying to crack into, you know, a different part of the, you know, the plumbing industry. So for us would be commercial, industrial, mid-rise, and so on. The problem is that these guys have been stuck doing residential their entire careers, and there are very different avenues of plumbing. So a guy coming from residential trying to go into commercial, he's probably never even touched, you know, cast iron piping. He's probably never brazed. There's a lot of things that technically he's never done or seen. So one of the things that me and Johnny did when we started iPlumb, we kind of said yes to everything. Like, we were the ultimate yes men, but we made it a point to never let anybody down. And in turn, what ended up happening is we kind of became this unique company in the city that is known to be able to do everything. Now, we kind of try to shy away from residential to begin with, just because for us, it doesn't make any sense, not to bash it in any kind of way. But I kind of look at the residential plumbers kind of like as the, you know, the low end plumbers. It's the most simple thing, you know, plumbing wise to do. If you do 1 or 2 houses, you know, you can do them all essentially, right? There's nothing too complicated about it. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because what I noticed is that we kind of became recession proof by doing that, right? So now we're working in schools, we're working in universities, colleges, hospitals, but then we also started a service department. So we're also servicing all the new construction that we're doing. So all the mid-rise that we're doing, the new, car dealerships that are going up, whatever it is, we're now servicing them. So, and we also have plumbers that are able to go and do a custom home with a $20,000 shower head and super technical and complicated shower controls to install. But we also have guys that can rough in a warehouse in 2-3 weeks, and they have the speed. They're able to put up pipe at in crazy numbers. So the fact that we have these very versatile plumbers and we've become a versatile company, I think is important, because now if you go back to this framer who he's put all of his eggs into this residential basket, and all of a sudden it comes to a screeching halt, and now he's kind of left holding the bag, and he's looking for work, and he may not have the experience yet to crack into another industry, right? And if he's able to, it's going to take him longer than the next guy who's already done it. Whether he becomes like a foreman carpenter on a high-rise job, it's completely different than framing a house, right? Same with the electrician that's been just pulling regular wires and just roughing in a house and putting in pot lights, who's now going into an industrial setting or a high-rise, and he's working with with BX, and he's bending conduit. So that's kind of like the advice I would like. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing these guys coming in, even like the plumbing, the residential plumbers are coming in looking for work. And again, it's very hard for me to hire these guys because they don't have that experience. And why would I hire you? I might as well just hire a guy that's fresh off the street. That's kind of the way I look at it. So the advice I can give to other owners is kind of expand what you do. Don't stick to one market, right? Don't stick to one industry, because like you said, it could slow down. And then, if that's your bread and butter and that's all you know how to do, people are going to be hesitant to give you work in other sectors.
But also in all fairness to those companies as well, they built a company based on that type of work, right? So again, even, another one was like, bricklayers, right? Same thing. Like these people, their companies and the way they function is for subdivisions. Whether they're piece workers, whether they're crews, they know that they're going to go there, set up scaffolds, and, they got 5-10 houses to do, where it's just not reality right now.
But you know what I say to that,
again,
though?
what tends to
John,
happen.
sorry to cut you off. Sorry, just quickly. You know what I say to that? I say no one cares. It's 2025. The information is out there. Like, you have to keep your ear to the ground. You have to be aware of the things that are happening around you. So for you to just turn around and say, oh, but you know what, I've built this, this company doing this type of work and everything's always worked out, and now poor me, now it's all gone. To be fair, no one gives a shit. No one's going to come and save you. No one's going to coddle you. It's just the reality of life. So it's either you right the ship, you prepare for it, or you drown with everybody else.
No, and you're right. But what I'm saying is the implications on this happening is what tends to happen is when they shift, a lot of these guys that are going from the subdivisions are now the easiest transition is into the custom home market. Now, when you shift into the custom home market, you oversaturate the market, which then drives down the costs because people are desperate for work, right? This happens on every recession, right? And the prices just start to undercut. But at the same time, a lot of these companies too, they are union, and like the union negotiation contracts, they're up for renewal. So it's like people are going for more money, yet the work is not there. They're saturating now another market because think about how many people have to make that shift over, and it fucking throws the balance scale all off, right? And in all fairness, 100%, you should have had your ear to the ground. You should have knew that this was coming. The signs were all there. It just, talking to these guys, you feel for them because, the reality is this, right? Why are subdivisions not going up? Why? And it has to do with our economy. This all stems down to our economy and policies and the printing of money. At free will, which, again, leads into a whole other conversation. But the reality is, we're in a very tough spot here in Canada, and, especially in Ontario. And, as of right now, I don't see an end in sight. The builders are not, we talked about this many times. The incentive to build right now, it's not there, right? The interest rates, just the way everything's going now, with the uncertainty in the markets, the cost of materials going up, the Canadian dollar versus the American dollar. It's just everything kind of hitting at the same time. And, I just think that, we're just scratching the surface. I don't even think we're in the worst spot yet.
Sorry, I was gonna just add one more thing. I just feel like when things are going good, most people are not planning for the future, right? They get in a good rhythm and they kind of have this like sense of security where everything is going to work out. Everything's great. My pockets are getting fatter and fatter. But the reality of it is that's actually the best time that you should be planning, when things don't continue to go as well as they have been. Like if to your point, John, like, the market being saturated, like last year we had probably the slowest 6 months to start a year that we've ever seen in the life of our company. Right. And, we were seeing prices come across the table competing against us that were just ridiculous. They didn't make any sense. So obviously people were desperate. But with that being said, as scary of a time as it was, we put our heads down and we charged forward and we leaned on, the relationships that we had and the reputable contractors that we've been working with for, over a decade. And because of that, because we're so versatile and because we can do so much stuff, we got out of that mess. Right. So, I just feel that like we did that because we planned for these things. Right. So even when things are going very well, we know that eventually it's going to stop, right? The river will stop flowing eventually, and then it starts up again. But you have to plan for these moments, right? You can't, because like I said, I'm not trying to come off as like rude. I get it. Like we're all sympathetic to these people. We've been there before, but the reality is last year, no one cared about us, right? No one picks up the phone and says, oh man, I heard you guys are going through a tough time. I'm so sorry. No one cares. Right. And that's the reality. And as harsh as it is, I think the sooner people realize that and act on that, the better off they'll be. And we won't have to have these conversations.
Yeah, I pulled this up quickly. So I know, John, you mentioned like Canada, Ontario. This is actually from the US. So this is North America wide what's happening, right? This is not isolated to just Ontario. So this is an interesting one. So this is revenue from spring 2022 to the fall 2023. Residential was 47% of revenue in construction in spring 2022. Fall 2023 is 60. This is older data, but this is actually like trending even further down. So again, back to my point, like Charlie, what you're saying, this is nothing new to companies that are paying attention, like you, who has been like proactive, has your nose to the ground. But back to like the companies listening to this, the owners who are actually feeling it right now today. Like, how do you survive what's happening right now? How do you survive this slowdown? Like, what are some real practical things if you're a company like this framer, whose like business is like literally at a standstill, has nothing going on? Like, what are you doing if you're in his position?
Well, like I'll tell you from what I've been seeing to the people I've been talking to. So, I've seen some framers, and again, there's a difference between, the rough carpenters and finished carpenters, right? So I've seen some rough carpenters, starting to quote finished carpentry, right? Which again, if you understand the industry, it's kind of like one's finesse and the other one's rough, right? I know another crew that literally, even though they're union, they went to go work for like a high-rise forming company, right? So, they went from building houses and to getting on, like Charlie said, to a job site where they've never seen, this type of work, and they're starting to frame, concrete forms, right? Which which again, that's not what they do. They know how to swing a hammer, they know how to cut wood, they know how to measure. So you're starting to see a lot of guys shift and get into different parts of the industry that they never thought that they would ever do in their lives. And the only reason that they're doing it is because the work is not there. Now, I get everybody has to do what they got to do to get through the tough times, 100,000,000%. But the only thing I'm seeing, and what I truly hope doesn't happen, which you're starting to see it slowly. I just hope this doesn't hang on for too much longer. But you're seeing these bigger companies that were geared towards a certain industry to really push it forward. That they're crumbling, right? They're losing guys. They're losing, like force. We just talked about this. What was it? Two episodes ago, about how the government's spending this money on initiative to teach framing. You know what I mean? I believe it was they were spending $27 million to educate and to help people learn like how to frame, right? Where it's like, okay, well, there's no fucking houses to frame. You know what I mean? Is this the right time to be, trying to get people into framing? You know what I mean? It's almost like there's a crisis on the hand. Like getting back to that conversation, there's a crisis at hand right now where obviously there's not many subdivisions going up. So even if you were to train everybody overnight, okay, now you got 3,000 carpenters that, they're trained, they're ready to go. Where are they going?
So if I'm a residential company right now, and I'm doing my research, I'm looking at like what's actually happening, slowdown in residential. You see commercial and industrial like pick up or maintain its growth. Naturally, my reaction would be like, hey, I'm gonna figure out to like shift my business to more commercial. So can you see in the next, 6 to 12 months, the commercial side being much more competitive to the point where now when you're bidding jobs, it's going to be more saturated on the commercial side, which is going to drive pricing down. Can you see that scenario happening?
It can happen. I don't see it on the commercial side. Like when you're talking like the ICI sector, I don't really see carpenters being able to get into that industry because there's not
carpenters. I'm just saying in general. Like if you're just seeing a slowdown in residential, like I don't know. I'm just theorizing here.
Yes
but like
and no.
More residential
Yeah,
companies
you're gonna start
moving
seeing
to commercial.
Yeah,
You are,
you're
but
gonna
yes and no,
start
because
seeing
it's still
on the commercial side.
jump.
there's such a big gap in the type of work that it is. Like I'll share a quick story with you. Before I started the company with Johnny, I worked at a high-rise company, and I sat down with my old boss and I asked him. I said, out of the plumbing trade, if you could put a percentage on it, how much do you know of the trade? Like, what's the percentage? And he thought about it for a second. And a guy that had been a plumber for over 40 years, he gave me an honest answer of 35%. So if you think about that, like the plumbing trade, a guy that's been doing it for 40 plus years only knows 35% of the trade because all he knew was high rise, right? So he had never stepped into a hospital, certain boiler rooms, whatever it may be. So if you really think about that, to give advice to somebody, don't just stick to one thing. If you're able to learn, you're never going to get to 100%. But if you're able to be exposed to 60%, 70% of the trade, it's going to be a lot easier for you to transition from a residential position into a commercial or a high-rise position, and vice versa. Let's say the high-rise completely dies down. We've had high-rise guys that all they've ever done is install finishings in buildings, okay, for 20 years. And they were laid off recently, and they come to us looking for a job. You would think that they worked with cast iron their whole life. They haven't. They just got stuck in a finishing position from building to building to building. And even these guys, I can't even hire them because they're not skilled enough, right? So you have to be aware of the skills that are out there that you're competing with as a worker, as an employer. And you have to make sure that you can compete with those people when the time comes. Learn as much as you can, and that way, if you have to make a shift, it's going to be a lot easier too. Because again, like these guys that are coming in through the door looking for work that are desperate, these residential plumbers, for me, it doesn't make any sense to hire them. And it doesn't make sense for them to get a job with me because I cannot pay them the money that they're asking for because they just don't have the skill that matches up with the crews that we have now, right? So that's really my take on it.
Yeah, and which makes sense, right? If you're a residential company trying to go to commercial, like it's a totally different world, right? Like
Yeah, and I don't
timelines are
feel threatened
different,
by that either.
safety,
Yeah,
margins, labor, like more paperwork and systems and insurance. Like it's a whole shift in a business. You
It's a
could
whole
say
other it's a whole other animal.
it's a
Like
whole different world. Yeah.
yeah,
it is.
truthfully, the difference, and this goes for electricians, plumbers, HVAC, like, you name it, right? The difference between residential to like commercial to industrial, you know what I mean? Like they're night and day, right? The way you hang pipe, the way you run wire, the way it's a totally different system, right? But the reality is that when it's sink or swim, you're going to start noticing a lot of these companies jump into an industry where, you know, I don't, the only way to put it is they have no business being there. But at the same time, when it's sink or swim, they're going to do everything they can. And yeah, it's going to saturate markets. That's what happens, right? When any industry, when one sector of the industry goes down, a lot of people are going to make the shift into the other sector where it's already, you already have your players in there that are playing that game, which again, it's a very competitive market, especially like here in Ontario, especially like the Toronto area. We have one of the most competitive construction markets in the world, right? We truly do. Like we work with a company that, they're all across North America. And, I was talking to one person in that company and they were saying that they're lucky in a Toronto project if they walk away with 5%. They're lucky. Whereas if they're working out east, out west, in the United States, their average is like 20 to 30%, right? So we're already in a very competitive market. Now you add one of the industries in that market taking a big hit and a lot of people pivoting into, another sector of that market, it's just going to saturate it more, right? Like I said, take that framer story. To frame a house, it's been the rate. This guy's been doing this for decades. He's never even been questioned on his price. The guy basically said, I'm going to give you 3 houses plus another 3, but you got to do these 3 houses at 35,000, right? The guy needed the work, so he's like, all right, you know what? Like, fuck it. You take a package deal, happens in every industry. So it's like, yeah, no problem. So you take those 3 houses, promise that you have another 3 houses coming, but when the other 3 houses come, now it's another, 15,000 off, which is 25%. So what he normally priced at 60,000, this other crew now that came in to take, the other 3 houses, they're doing it for half the price of the going rate. You know what I mean? So this is what, unfortunately, if we keep trending down this path, this is what we're going to keep seeing.
So you say this a lot as well, right? Where you're bidding on a job and you see these random companies that are just bidding like 20, 30% less. And you're like, how the hell are they doing this? Can't you see more of that happening now?
Oh, yeah.
With more of these companies attempting to switch to commercial?
Yeah, 100%, because, again, when you're pricing up against somebody that just doesn't have the experience, right? Like I'll give you a prime example. Like you look at a project, 2 projects can be the exact same, right? One can be in one building, right, downtown, and another can be in a totally different building. These buildings have processes and procedures, right? So like we've worked in enough of these buildings where if we know that there's a project inside one of these buildings, on an 8-hour day, you're lucky if you're able to get actually like 5 hours worth of work done, right? Just because of where you're allowed to keep your tools, the hours you're allowed to work, and so on and so forth, right? Like, again, getting down to their processes and procedures inside these specific buildings that are owned by these corporations. So if you got a company that's coming in, it's like, yeah, I'm an electrical contractor. I was doing residential, but now I'm going to bid this electrical job inside, one of these buildings that their processes and procedures are through the roof. When they send in their number, they have no idea, right? That it's like, well, how many man hours do you have? 200. Well, in order to do 200 like man hours worth of work, right? That's going to require you to carry 250 man hours, right? Because when you get into the building, there's a sign-in process before you're allowed to start. You have to set this up. You have to set that up. So if companies are not aware of that, number one, a lot of these companies could get hurt financially. And number two, yes, it's going to saturate the market where you're going to start seeing these prices. And you see them a little bit starting to pop up here and there, where the number just doesn't make sense. And, even us, when we're talking to the GCs, and it's like, how did they get to that number? It's like, I have no idea. Like, I even called them and it's like, hey guys, are you sure? Like, because you guys are like, there was one job that we closed. There was a company that was 40% less than the lowest guy. So you got like low, medium, and high, right? And normally that's about a 10 to 12% like difference. And then you had like this one company that came in that was 40% lower than the lowest guy, right?
At the end of the day, with that being said, I find that over the years, we've seen it like every couple of years, there'll be like an influx of new companies that come in. They drive the prices down. But at the end of the day, commercial is such a complex beast. It's so different than the other markets, like like high rise and residential and service, that only the best companies last. And I think, Johnny, you'll agree with that, right? Like your reputation is everything in commercial, and it's very uncommon for a new company to come in and actually make a big enough splash that they last, for a long time. There's just the bar is set way too high in the commercial sector compared to other ones. So I feel like this is nothing new. We might see some new companies come in, but at the end of the day, if you have the relationships, you have quality work, you have reliable crews working with you, you'll be fine.
So yeah, so what I'm hearing then is, would you say that you're really not worried or feel like threatened from companies making the jump to commercial just because like logistically it's not really practical or realistic for a lot of them to do it?
I'm not particularly worried about that.
Yeah, I'm not worried at all, because in the end of it, we've been doing this so long that we know exactly where the numbers got to be. Again, you typically get beat on, the margin that you're putting on top of something. So if somebody gives you, hypothetically a number that you need to carry as a sub-trade, let's say your supplier gives you a number of $10,000 for a piece of equipment. I might be putting, $2,000 on top. The other guy might be putting $1,000. Another guy might be putting 500, right? So you know the spread, and depending on how aggressive you go after the job, that's how you'll know if you're gonna, be the lowest guy or be in the middle of the pack or whatever it is. But essentially, if somebody wants to come in at 40% cheaper, it's almost like you want them to do the job, right? Where it's like, hey, go do it now, right? Now you're in a legal binding contract. Now you have to do that job for the amount that you said you're going to do it. And if you don't, right? Now there's other like implications. So they might do one or two, then they're going to, find out the very hard way that they fucked up. And that's where you start seeing a lot of guys also like exit the market. You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh fuck, like we shouldn't be in there. We don't understand exactly how it is to price this type of work yet. You know what I mean?
Costa, I can't even tell you how many times over the last 15 years we got outbid by a ridiculous price, and me and Johnny get a call 8-9 months later saying that these guys haven't showed up in a month and a half. There's problems everywhere. Can I plumb? Please come in and save the day. We're begging you. I can't even count on my hands how many times that's happened, right? And naturally, people are going to want to shop around. It's the nature of the beast. You have to keep people honest, right? I actually welcome competition, right? Like at the end of the day, this is the reality. But like I said before, true skill and relationships will outperform any fly by night guys coming in.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of commercial and kind of the complexities that come along with it, one of those, and something you guys deal with a lot, and we have a lot of conversations with other commercial companies relating to safety and safety regulations, and obviously good safety is one of these things that's non-negotiable. And you can also see like regulations have tightened a lot. Enforcement is stricter, especially probably like post COVID and all this stuff. But at the same time, I have a lot of conversations. I'm sure you guys have experienced things on your side as well, where safety is kind of over implemented to the point where things become just totally inefficient. So Charlie, do you see that? What are your thoughts on that and safety and like over safety, if that even makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, you don't see it everywhere. At the end of the day, these guys have a job to do. We have a job to do. So, I mean, I don't want to say we turn a blind eye to it. Safety is a very high priority. It always has. It always will be. But to a certain extent, right? Like you still have to get the job done. I'm a firm believer that the second you put on a hard hat and you call yourself a construction worker, you're taking some kind of risk, right? Like you're walking onto a job site. I mean, at the end of the day, something could drop on your head. This is the reality of the career path that you chose. With that being said, we just did a job recently. I'm not going to name any names, but I just saw some of the most like ridiculous requests for safety made that I've ever seen in 15 years, and another 5 years before that for my apprenticeship, to an extreme level, right? So I'll give you a few of them. Safety glasses are mandatory the second you step on site, which is not in the green book at all. That's just like their company policy, which is okay, fine, right? But I mean, even if you're sitting down having lunch, you have to wear your safety glasses, to that extent. We had to trench for some drains. So the trenches were like 4 foot 3 inches deep. And technically in the book, most people don't even know this because you'll never see any shoring done at 4 feet. But they came up to us and said that, yeah, these trenches have to be shored, right? You have to put trench boxes inside. Now, to anybody listening that's not a plumber, what happens now when you have to use like trench boxes and you have to shore these very like narrow trenches that are waist high? It not only, obviously the price goes up because now you have to supply these, you have to drop them in, pull them out every single time you drop in a piece of pipe, but now your labor is going to go up, right? So these requests kind of started coming in and then like, oh, what kind of excavator are you using? If you're not using an electrical one, you guys have to have air monitors on every single person, like just these things that I had never even heard of before. So the way I kind of approach this is not in a negative way. So I kind of, I take all the requests, I listen to them, and then I kind of put it back on them and say, you know what? I mean, some of these things I don't agree with, but if this is what you want to enforce, this is not in our quote, right? This is not in our scope of work. It's clearly outlined in the price that you guys accepted, the PO that you guys cut. This is not included. So I'll provide whatever you guys want. No problem. You guys want shoring boxes at 2 feet, I'll provide them. It makes no difference to me. But understand though that the cost is going to come back to you and then ultimately your client. And I don't personally think your client even knows that you guys are making these requests, because when they see an extra $50, $60, $80,000, whatever it may be, I think your story is going to change very, very quickly, right? Because they're trying to portray this image of being like this super safe thing. But now I also forgot to mention that we had a very tight schedule for these drains. Now, when all these requests were made and these extras had to be priced out, immediately the schedule gets pushed back by a minimum of a week, 2 weeks, because now we're in a negotiation process. Now we're creating quotes for extras. Now it's got to go back to the client. It has to get approved. So needless to say, the client saw the price, freaked out, told them, why are you guys making them do this, right? So every request that they had made was removed, and we were back to work, and we lost almost a week's worth of work, right? For what? I don't know what they were trying to prove. Nobody's working unsafely, right? And so it just goes to show you that's one example. That's an extreme example, and I probably gave you like 20 to 30% of the requests that were made, but it just goes to show you that's a perfect example of a general contractor actually being counterproductive, right, and causing delays. And they're yelling at you and screaming that they want you to hit these targets and meet the schedule, yet they keep throwing these hurdles in front of you, right? So I think, what I can say is the best thing to do is actually welcome them, right? Don't be combative. Just take them in and then turn it back around on them. No problem. You want this? You got it. Let me get a price out to you, right? And then you'll see that everything kind of starts to change. Oh, well, what do you mean? Like, isn't this not included? No, of course it's not included, right? Now your labor rates are your labor is going to jump 30%. You're going to have an extra, X and X for this and that, and things will change very quickly. And like I said, this is not me saying that you should be working unsafely. It's just I actually believe that dropping shoring boxes in and pulling them out and dropping them in and pulling them out and having guys in and out of the trench constantly is actually more dangerous than being in a 4-foot trench and just running pipe and being productive.
Yes. Yeah. So like not only is that extremely inefficient, it's costly, it causes delays. So what are some smarter ways then to manage safety and like being as safe as you possibly can without killing productivity?
I'll tell you right now, and this is what I would say 95 to 98% of general contractors do, is they have the right people hired, right? The right people in the right position. So they have good site supers, they have good project managers that have been in construction for decades. They know how to run a job. They understand the process of running a job. So you're not going to be stopped and told to put a shoring box in a 4-foot trench. That's not even a part of the conversation. They're actually wondering why you haven't already jumped in there and made your tie-in and called for inspection, right? Because the schedule is king, but obviously, the schedule will never interfere with obviously someone's safety, but they understand what's safe and what's not, right? If I'm asking you to go put in a window and there's no harness hooks on the side of a building, right? That's unsafe, right? And if I'm pushing you and say, no, you have to get all these windows in by the end of the day, and a guy has nowhere to tie off, right? That's negligent, right? That's a piece of shit. That's an asshole. He's just trying to get the job done, and he's willing to sacrifice you for it. That's completely different, right? So I think it's, and again, this is like 95% of the guys that we work with are fantastic. They know what they're doing. And we've been working with them for a long time, and not just with the supers, with the framers, with the electricians, and multiple companies. Doesn't matter. We see each other on every few jobs. We know each other. We work together well, and we know that if an electrician has a scope of work in this area and they've told us they're going to work there, we're going to stay away from them, right? We're going to work in our own area. We're going to get our work done. If we're trenching, we'll let everybody know ahead of time. We're going to be trenching this entire warehouse. So from this week to this week, nobody come in. Can't drive scissor lifts. We work together, right? And I think it just comes down to just being logical, having common sense, a good understanding of construction, and communication.
John, anything else to add regarding safety?
No, other than, safety is one of the highest, if not the highest priority. But, just Cole's notes on everything Charlie said. There is something to say about a safe site and working in a safe environment. But there is also something to say about overregulation and over safety to a point that you can't even get your job done, right? I can give many examples, but, if I have to work in an area that I'm running 100 feet, and every 6 feet there's a hurdle that you're asking me to do something, and you're asking me to do it within a week timeline, but those hurdles that you put in front of me, each hurdle is 4-hour delay, right? You're setting me up for failure. You will never meet that target, right? So there is something to say about over-regulating and overdoing, and it goes for anything, right? It doesn't just have to be about safety, because safety is a very touchy topic, because people have lost their lives due to negligence, and just stupidity done on a job site. So again, it is of the highest priority. But there are certain companies, or certain individuals, let's say, I wouldn't even say the company per se, it could be the site super, it could be a project manager, could be, many different things, that they're taking it upon themselves to make it so much harder. And it actually like significantly slows down production, right? To a point where it's actually detrimental. And I always say it's the same with rising material costs, rising labor costs, whatever you want to call it. In the end of it, the only person that's flipping that bill is the end user, right? So unless the end user, which is the client, is okay with that overregulation, delay to the project and everything like that, then I just don't understand why certain companies implement that stuff, because it just sometimes it makes it impossible to work, right? Like again, like Charlie said, he only listed 30% of the examples. Some of the examples were just you can't even do it. Like what the request was like, okay, well then how are we supposed to, put up this pipe? Like on another job, for example, they wanted us to run a water line, and there was, it was in an existing building downtown, and they have a concourse level, right? And they're like, it's all about safety. Well, they wanted this line to go over this concourse level. And it's like, okay, safety is of the utmost priority here. How are you going to run a water line 35 feet in the air over a concourse that has a 5-story drop, right? It's like, what am I supposed to do? Call in Superman, to fly? Like, it's impossible. Like what you're asking to do is literally impossible. And we don't use those words lightly, right? Like we always have this mentality where there's a will, there's a way, but something's going to have to give here, right? Because it just can't be done, it can't be done in a fast and timely manner. But at the same time, like, this is the safety standard. We're going to set the bar here. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. A lot of it just seems like just common sense, right? Like, no one's saying to compromise safety, but there comes a line where it's like common sense should prevail, right? It's just like unnecessary overreach sometimes.
What you'll notice is a lot of these safety reps are not in construction or never have been in construction. They've been hired just to kind of dictate what you can and can't do. And they're by the book, right? Like some plumbing inspectors, right? We're seeing a lot of new inspectors coming in. They're very young. They just came out of the course that they have to do. And they are quoting things like word for word, where older inspectors that were actually licensed plumbers once upon a time would give you some leeway, because they would say, well, look, I know you kind of went against code, but it's still acceptable because the way this building is, it's an existing building, you just really don't have a choice. I completely understand. And if you to stick to the code 100%, you'd have to give them like $100,000 extra, which I'm not going to make you do that. It's ridiculous. It'll still work the way it is. You don't have that anymore. And I feel like it's the same thing with these safety guys. They're just coming in, and in the book it says that a hard hat must be worn at all times. Except, you're in a ceiling and your head is jammed between two ducts. You obviously can't wear your hard hat, and they're sitting at the bottom of the ladder waiting for you to come down to reprimand you or give you a ticket or whatever the case may be, when it's physically impossible to wear a hard hat. So there's no common sense. There's no leeway, because they've actually never been up that ladder doing the physical work, right? So
I was going to use actually a similar example, which happened to me. Where it was like, I'm working in a finished space. I'm inside I'm bent over to get underneath like a cabinet to hook up like a trap, excuse me, a trap to a sink. And, you take your hard hat off because you got to get underneath the sink, right? There's no room. And, I got a guy yelling at me. He's like, put your hard hat back on, and it's like, well, how am I supposed to hook up the sink upside down? The hard hat won't even stay on my head. And with all due respect, like, what's going to come flying? Like, is the roof going to come? If the roof comes down and I'm underneath the sink, believe me, man, like, nothing's going to save me. You know what I mean? Like, it's like that, like, this is the like what you said, Costa, like the common sense has to kick in, right? Where it's like, no, I get it. Like, we're trying to work as safe as possible. Look, my hard hat is literally beside the sink. When I'm done, underneath the cabinet, I'm going to get up, right? Put my hard hat back on, test it while I'm standing straight, right? If you've ever seen a hard hat, yes, you can tighten it. They like the ones we wear, typically plumbers, they have like a little, like a dial at the back where you could tighten and loosen it. But if I'm upside down on a 45 degree, it's coming off, right? Like it's physics, you know what I mean? So it's like,
it would be an interesting like data to collect, and like no knock on like government employees, but like how many of these like safety inspectors and stuff employed by contractors actually come from government sectors in the past?
That'd be an interesting statistic to see.
That would be. Yeah, common sense prevails. You mentioned, John, you briefly touched on like material costs. Speaking on that a little bit, just like coming back to another topic we've touched on several times now, tariffs and like, material prices. Have you noticed anything regarding that? Like, have things stabilized? Like, are things still kind of erratic, or what's going on the pricing material side?
Well, in the last, I want to say 45 days on, like metals, you've definitely seen like a significant rise. I think like on average, I want to say, don't quote me on this, but definitely over 20%, might even be over 30% on some of it. I have noticed that, let's say since the beginning of April, kind of like the newsletters, while we're in limbo here with the tariffs, from our suppliers and manufacturers haven't been coming as frequently. Like I know, like, the end of February, all of March, it was like every like 5 days we're getting a new email saying, this is going up, this is potentially going up, secure your material, you know what I mean, to secure pricing. But definitely like in the last 45 days, things have gone up significantly. But again, it's like we always say, right? What happens? Okay, this, length of pipe was $100. Now it's $150. Well, as I'm bidding this job, I'm bidding at $150 plus my markup, not the $100. You know what I mean? So again, it just makes all the building costs go up, right? So, everybody keeps talking, and this is where I start to get very frustrated when you just hear the news and everything and politicians talking, where it's like, we need to bring down the cost of living and the cost of building and doing this and doing that. And it's like, well, look, I'm no I'm no economist, but whatever you guys are doing, it's definitely trending in, the opposite way of what you guys are trying to achieve, right? It's not working. Right? Things are getting more expensive. Yeah. You know what I mean? So yeah, I definitely see it. Like I can say, at least for the last, what are we now? April 16. So at least for the last 16 days, I haven't been seeing as many of those emails and newsletters coming through from our suppliers and manufacturers. But again, I think we're in a 90-day limbo with negotiations on it.
Do you see a lot of trades absorbing the cost just to stay afloat and keep working?
You can't, right? Like, and again, I can't speak for every industry or every trade or every company, but again, on the projects that we work on, we typically work on 10% margins, right? So if the cost of materials rise 20, 30%, what are you absorbing? You know what I mean? Like what I can tell you.
Yeah, I was going to say, our margins are so tight, man.
Yeah.
There's no absorbing anything.
Well, absorbing, I mean, in the sense of like, because at the end of the day, like the GCs have the majority of the leverage here, right? If they stand firm. It's like, look, we can't absorb any costs on our end. And now the trades are forced to either absorb it, not make any profit, maybe lose some, just to stay working, keep guys employed. Like,
No,
is that happening yet, or?
you'll have some companies, which I know some of like our fellow friends in the industry. Like I know people are taking some jobs at nearly cost, right? Just to keep working, but to start taking it at a negative 20%, nobody can do that, right? Absolutely not. We will absorb costs instead of going in at 10%. Okay, go in at 7 or 8%. You know what I mean? Like just turnover dollars, keep everybody working. Yeah, you could definitely see that. But the amount that like the costs have risen on certain materials, there's no way anybody can, absorb that impact. Now, if you're talking 2-3%, yeah, happens all the time, right?
I mean, especially if you've already bid the job, you got it, and it just started, and then the price go up. Then it's on you. You don't really have a choice. But if the prices go up after a while and you haven't been able to start the job, and we consider that a legitimate extra, and there's no reason why you should have to take on that cost, right? That will go back to the client.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, boys. Anything else to hit on?
Nothing other than, again, man, anybody listening from our discussions, whether it's this one or any other episode, like, comment, subscribe. Love these open conversations. I hope everybody's getting, some type of value from what we're talking about, because we're literally talking about, things that we discuss with other companies every day. We talk to, hundreds, if not thousands of, tradesmen and companies. And we're just trying to shed as much light into the industry as we can. And, just keep everybody up to date. So that's all I'd like to add. Yeah. If anybody's listening, please.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing. Especially, to the point that you made, John, about that carpenter that's, struggling to find work at the moment. I see a lot of these guys, that find themselves in this situation. And a lot of times it's simply because they cannot get off the tools. They are slaves to their own company. And this can be solved with using a simple software like Jobtable. It's very cost efficient. You won't even notice the money being gone for how much value it's going to provide for you. And I'm telling you, this will truly free up your time and actually give you the ability to go out and make more relationships and kind of diversify and put yourself into different types of markets, for your trade, and give you more opportunities. So there's a little plug for Jobtable, but by all means, come jobtable.com, try it out for free for 14 days, and you will not be disappointed.
Yeah, jobtable.com. There's a 14-day free trial. If you're a contractor listening, want to simplify things, become more efficient, pay $49 a month, but save yourself several hours. There's no better ROI. So do check it out, jobtable.com, and get started with a 14-day free trial. Boys, pleasure as always. We'll wrap there, and until next week.
All right, guys.
Take care, man.
All right.
No.